Well, a pretty bold selection, I think, this week from Steve Borthwick, the England head coach. Apologies for those of you that were hoping for a video yesterday reacting to the England team news. Didn't get round to it. So today, preview England against France, including that big team news from an England perspective. Finn Smith starting, Marcus Smith starting, changes in the back row, experience on the bench. I will get into all of that throughout the video. As I say, welcome back to the channel. Put a comment down below. What do you make of the England team selection? Here's a question for you that I'll get onto at the end. For all our perceptions of Steve Borthwick, is he actually a bit of a risk taker with some of the selections and the players he picks and the combinations he tries? I'll get onto that. You have your say in the comments, and also like the video and hit that subscribe button whilst you're here as well. It's always the case in a Six Nations, particularly week 2, but massive game, isn't it? From an England point of view, they lose this, you know that the noises around the team, the negative noises around the team are only going to get bigger. And from a French point of view, as I've been saying this year, they need another Six Nations title. For how good this generation, this golden generation of French players are, it's only the one Six Nations Grand Slam. They need another title, I think, and I think they've got a good opportunity this year, but it certainly won't be easy, and that starts this weekend with them coming to Twickenham. They blew Wales away. What do they do away to England? The last time they were here, a couple of years ago, you'll remember, 53-10, one of the worst days. I think it was the worst result at home ever for England, wasn't it? Certainly something like that. So what do France bring this weekend? We know how strong they are. In terms of England then, Finn Smith starts, Marcus Smith is at fullback. What do you all make of that as a combination? I think ultimately it comes down to a variety of different things. I think Finn Smith is a more game-controlling fly half than Marcus. Marcus has some brilliant strengths, but I think Finn Smith is more that guy. And I think we've seen that despite his age. Well, he's 22 now, isn't he? But at quite a young age, he was, you know, the win away against Munster in the Champions Cup last year, I thought he was absolutely exceptional. He helped guide Northampton to a Premiership title. That run in the Champions Cup as well, where they ended up losing to Leinster in the semi-final. Like this, he's a pretty experienced and steady head on young shoulders. And I'm delighted that he's finally got his opportunity to start. We've seen him coming off the bench for 7 test matches. He now gets an opportunity to lead the team and to start. The more controversial side of this, possibly, I don't know, is going to be Marcus Smith at fullback. And on the one hand, you look at it and you say, well, Marcus Smith isn't a fullback. We know that. He's a fly half. We very rarely see him selected there. It's only really since the World Cup, wasn't it? I think that Borthwick and the England coaches started to think of the possibility of Marcus being a fullback. For this game in particular, there's actually quite a good case to be made why it makes sense, which is that France kick long. They don't kick to compete as often. So therefore, do you want someone like Marcus Smith in your backfield who can then counter-attack and run it back at them, rather than the Freddie Steward who is going to be better off competing for the ball? So from that point of view, I do understand it. Like, there's actually quite a rational part of why it makes sense. I wonder whether France will change up their kicking game. I suspect not, because it is how they play. I don't think they're going to change it based upon one selection. But I wonder whether they will look to try and compete against Marcus Smith a little bit more. But on the whole, it does make that backline for England more explosive and exciting. And Freddie Steward has some brilliant strengths at fullback. He will still, without question, I think, have a real role to play at other times for England. But right here, right now, this game this weekend, is this the best option? It would be George Furbank. I think that's the other thing, isn't it? Furbank's injury limits your options. But, you know, Marcus Smith at fullback adds a little bit more pace, a bit more counter-attacking. Hopefully he gets some broken field to exploit. England will hope that is a benefit. And as I say, for Finn Smith, I'm really excited to see how he goes. I'm delighted that he gets this opportunity. I've been impressed with him for a long time, as a lot of people have. But particularly that performance against Munster, I always reference it. Like that performance in the Champions Cup, he was excellent. At a young age, they had a red card, tough conditions, Thomond Park, all the rest of it. Elsewhere for England, back row, better balance in the back row, do we think? Tom Willis gets his start, Ben Earl moves to open side, Tom Curry stays at blind side. You feel like that has a better balance, in particular with the replacements they can bring off the bench in Chesham, Cunningham South and Ben Curry. Yeah, I like the look of the makeup of that England back row. In particular, Tom Willis, he's been the best number 8 in the Premiership. can give you a bit of go forward. I think one of the things that Wales struggled with massively against the French, certainly in the first 20 minutes last week, was they had plenty of the ball, but they just had no punch, no fizz, no X factor. I think Tom Willis will give England some better carrying ability in the back row. You've still got Penaud there as well, who's the kind of more explosive carrier. Marcus Smith as well, to go back to that and not having the kind of dynamism to break them down. He gives you a little bit more pace out wide to hopefully try and get through them or round them and cause them more problems defensively. So I like the look of the back row. And the big thing, I think, experience on the bench. Jamie George is back in the team, closing in on 100 caps, and Elliot Daly as well. Elliot Daly probably is a name that isn't as popular with England fans, but I think when you go with a 6-2 bench split, and you have someone with Daly's versatility plus his experience, it does make sense. So they've got experience on the bench. That can't be an excuse this week about their bench not having the experience of Ireland's bench. This England replacements are more experienced than the French. And also I think in Jamie George, you've got quality as well. I think you've got more quality in terms of your set piece than with Theo Dan coming off the bench, for example. So is Steve Borthwick a risk taker? To go back to the question I posed a moment ago, the reason I ask this is he's thought of, and I think partly it's because he's Steve Borthwick, the former England lock, who's associated with Leicester Tigers and a big pack and tactical kicking to the corner and being obsessed with data and data-driven and all that kind of stuff, that we don't necessarily think of him as someone that takes risks. But I look at it last week against Ireland. He basically named 3 open sides in the England back row. Marcus Smith at fullback is something he has tried since the World Cup, and we see it again here. And do you remember Eddie Jones for ages would suggest things like Jack Nowell is a back rower, and then never actually do it. Even Penaud with this England team, he trains in the back line at some point each week. We have seen them try to use him in that 12 channel. Like, for all the pragmatism and the stereotype about Steve Borthwick, is it actually a bit unfair? Does he take more risks? Does he do more things that are unexpected than we give him credit for? If that makes sense. I don't know, it's worth thinking about. I think it's certainly something I'm starting to notice more and more in a number of his selections. You let me know, what do you make of it? Just finally, let's finish off with the French. Big pack, incredible backs, led by Antoine Dupont. It is so difficult to beat them. And I think they will win this weekend. My hope from an English point of view is I wrote off England against Ireland in last year's Six Nations, and then England produced a brilliant performance to get that win that kind of propped up their 2024 for a lot of it anyway. I'm hoping for something like that, where England produce something we don't expect, and I suppose maintain it throughout the game. That's been the problem, the drop-off. I think England, most likely, I don't think they'll get blown away like they were a couple of years ago. I mean, you never know with how good this French team is. But you would expect England, in most of the games they've been losing recently, they've been in it at half-time. I think it'll be close at half-time. The question is, what happens in the second half? As for this French side, Damian Penaud is back. I mean, him and Louis Bielbiarré and Thomas Ramos as a back three are as good as anyone in the world, aren't they, I think? As a three, who else would you put above them? You'd take Cheslin Colby and Kurtley Aronser, possibly as wings that could rival them. Fullbacks change for the Springboks, possibly the All Blacks as well. But overall, the French back three is exceptional. Dupont, we know all about. People wax lyrical about him. Jalabert is coming in at fly half with Untermack being injured. And as I say, that forward pack, it's beefy. They're good at the set piece. We know that they're physical. England have a huge task and challenge on their hand to go up against them, to go toe-to-toe with them this weekend. Who do you see winning? I've got to say, those of you that have watched the channel for a while will know that I'm a bit of a pragmatist when it comes to things like this. I see it. If I see it, I'll then believe it, sort of thing. I find it difficult to just sit here now and predict an England win, because I think based upon the evidence in front of us, I've got to go with the French. I think England are capable of it, but I think it will probably be a narrow French victory. Or who knows? Are we about to see the future? Finn Smith at 10, Marcus Smith at fullback, and how this England team is going to kick on with the balance in the back row. Who knows? Looking forward to it though. I will be at Twickenham. Cannot wait for the game. Give me your predictions in the comments. Like the video as well. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.